The video was never meant for me to see. It was just a few minutes from a family dinner I had missed because I was working late. I pressed play, expecting smiles and birthday toasts. Instead, I heard my own brother laugh and call me a pathetic failure. What none of them knew was that for the last 6 years, I had been quietly paying the bills that kept all of their lives from falling apart. My name is Audrey, and at 34, I had built a life around one simple rule. Family comes first. It wasn't something I learned from my parents. If anything, they taught me the opposite. Growing up, money was always short, tempers were always high, and every small success came with the reminder that it could disappear overnight. I was the oldest of 3 children, which meant I became the responsible one by default. While my younger brother, Dylan, chased one business idea after another, and my sister, Rachel, drifted from job to job. I stayed focused. I studied accounting, worked through college, and eventually opened my own financial consulting practice. The hours were brutal, but I was proud of what I had built. The strange thing about being the reliable one is that people stop seeing your sacrifices. They only notice that you always manage to show up. The first time my parents asked for help, it was because Dad had fallen behind on the mortgage. I wired the money without hesitation. The second time, it was medical bills. Then it was Rachel's rent after she lost her job. Then Dylan's credit card debt after another one of his surefire investments collapsed. Each time, they promised it would be temporary. Each time, I believed them. I never wanted praise. I never even wanted anyone else to know. My parents were proud people, and I didn't want them to feel embarrassed. So I arranged quiet transfers, paid invoices directly, and sometimes even convinced my clients to delay my own payments so I could cover another family emergency. Over the years, those emergencies became routine: the electric bill, the car repair, the overdue insurance payment, the tax notice that arrived in the mail. I handled them all, and somehow, despite carrying everyone else's burdens, I was still the one the family described as boring, too serious, and married to work. Missed birthdays because I was finishing client reports. I skipped vacations because someone always needed financial help. I worked weekends and holidays while everyone else posted cheerful family photos online. I told myself it was worth it. I told myself that one day they would understand. Then, 3 weeks ago, my aunt accidentally sent me a video. There was no message attached. Just a 30-second clip recorded at a family dinner I had missed because I was finalizing paperwork for an important client. I smiled when I saw the thumbnail. Mom was laughing. Rachel was holding a glass of wine. Even Dad looked relaxed for once. I hit play. At first, it was exactly what I expected. Plates clattered. People joked. Someone complained about the weather. Then my aunt's voice came from behind the camera. Too bad Audrey couldn't make it. My brother snorted. She wouldn't know how to have fun if her life depended on it. Few people laughed. Then my mother said quietly, "She's always been that way. Works all the time, no husband, no kids. Honestly, I feel sorry for her." I felt a sting in my chest. But I kept watching. That's when Dylan leaned back in his chair, raised his glass, and said the words I still hear every time the room goes quiet. To Audrey, he laughed. The family's own pathetic failure. Everyone laughed, even my father. I replayed the clip 3 times, hoping I had misunderstood. Hoping there was a joke or some context that the camera had missed. There wasn't. I sat alone in my apartment that night, staring at the screen and realizing something I had refused to admit for years. The people I had spent half my life rescuing didn't see me as a daughter, a sister, or even a member of the family. To them, I was just the quiet woman who always worked, always gave, and never asked for anything in return. For the first time in 6 years, I opened my banking app and looked at the list of automatic payments connected to my family: the mortgage, contribution, Rachel's apartment transfer, Dad's insurance premium, Dylan's debt repayment plan. I hovered my finger over the screen, wondering what would happen if I simply stopped. I had no idea that one decision would unravel secrets my family had spent decades hiding, or that within a month, the same people who laughed at me over dinner would be standing at my front door, desperate for my help. And by then, I would finally know the truth about why they had always treated me like the outsider. The truth was far worse than being called a failure. It turned out I had never been part of their plan at all. I didn't cancel the payments that night. I wanted to. My hand hovered over the screen for almost a full minute. All it would have taken was a single tap. 6 automatic transfers, one after another, would disappear. For the first time in years, the money would stay in my account, and my family would finally have to deal with the consequences of their own choices. But I couldn't do it. Not yet. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe some part of me still wanted to believe the video had been a misunderstanding. I closed the banking app, set my phone down on the kitchen table, and spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling. The next morning, I called Aunt Linda. "I think you sent me something by accident," I said as calmly as I could. There was a long silence on the other end before she quietly asked, "What video?" "The family dinner," I answered. The silence that followed was even longer. Finally, she whispered, "Oh, Audrey." That was all I needed to hear. "You knew?" I asked. "I never meant for you to see it like this," she said softly. "I was clearing out old videos and accidentally sent it to you instead of your mother. The moment I realized what I'd done, I knew I couldn't take it back." I swallowed hard. "You didn't realize I'd finally see what everyone really thinks of me?" She sighed. "It isn't as simple as that." I almost laughed. "Really? Because it looked pretty simple. My brother called me a pathetic failure and everyone else laughed." She tried to say my name, but I stopped her. "Just tell me one thing. Were you laughing too?" She never answered. I thanked her for her honesty, ended the call, and went to work. I thought that would be the end of it. Instead, it was only the beginning. 3 days later, my father called. "Hey, sweetheart," he said in that cheerful voice he only used when he needed something. "I got an email from the insurance company saying the payment is due tomorrow." "You didn't forget, did you?" I frowned. "No," I replied. "It'll be there." He sounded relieved. "Good. You know how stressful these things are for your mother." The call lasted less than 2 minutes. He never asked how I was. He never mentioned that I had missed the family dinner. And he certainly never mentioned the video. When I hung up, I opened my banking app again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I canceled my brother's monthly debt payment, then my sister's rent assistance, then my father's insurance transfer. I left the mortgage contribution active for 1 more month. I still couldn't bring myself to risk my parents losing their home overnight. But everything else stopped. I expected angry phone calls. I expected arguments. What I didn't expect was silence. A full week passed and nobody checked on me. Nobody apologized. Nobody even asked why the payments had stopped. Then, on Friday afternoon, while I was meeting with a client, my phone buzzed 7 times in a row. Mom calling. Dad calling. Dylan calling. There were 3 voicemails and 4 text messages. The first was from Rachel. "Hey, my landlord says the rent didn't come through. Did something happen with the bank?" The second was from Dylan. "Need you to call me ASAP. It's important." The third was from my father. "We need to talk. Not how are you. Not is everything okay, just we need to talk." I finished my meeting before responding. By the time I reached my car, my phone rang again. This time I answered. "What happened?" Dylan demanded. "What do you mean?" I asked. "My payment didn't go through." "Oh," I said quietly. "Oh," he snapped. "That's all you have to say?" I looked out across the parking lot, watching people hurry home after work. "You know," I said, "I saw a video last week. Aunt Linda sent it to me by mistake." The line went completely silent. "I heard what you said about me." He let out an irritated sigh. "You're seriously bringing that up? You called me a pathetic failure." "Oh, come on." "It was a joke." "A joke?" "Yes, people joke around, Audrey. You always take everything so personally." I closed my eyes. "For 6 years, I've been helping you." "I never asked you to do any of that, Audrey," he shot back. "You chose to." That sentence hit harder than anything else. He was right. He never had to ask, because everyone already knew I would always say yes. "You're right," I finally said. "You didn't ask." There was a pause before he spoke again. "So, are you fixing the payment or not?" "No. What?" "I'm not fixing it." "You can't be serious." "I am." His voice rose. "You know I'm counting on that money." I took a slow breath. "And I was counting on my family not laughing at me behind my back." His tone turned cold. "So this is revenge?" "No," I answered. "This is the first time I've stopped pretending everything is okay." He hung up without another word. I sat in my car for almost 10 minutes, waiting for the guilt to hit me. It never came. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: relief. The weekend was complete chaos. My mother called 12 times. My father left 3 angry voicemails. Rachel sent me a message saying she might be evicted if I didn't stop being dramatic. Not one of them apologized. Not one of them admitted what they had done. By Sunday evening, there was a knock at my apartment door. I opened it to find my parents standing there. My mother's eyes were red, but there were no tears. My father looked furious. "We need to discuss your behavior," he said before I even had the chance to say hello. My behavior. I stepped aside and let them in. They sat on my couch as if they owned the place. My father folded his arms. "Your brother says you've cut everyone off." "I stopped making voluntary payments," I replied. "You made a commitment to this family." I stared at him. "A commitment?" "Families help each other," my mother said softly. I almost laughed. "Families don't call each other pathetic failures either." The room went quiet. My father exchanged a quick glance with my mother, then shrugged. "It was just a joke." I stood up. "Get out." My mother blinked. "What? You heard me." "Get out." My father's face turned red. "You're throwing your own parents out because of one stupid comment?" I shook my head. "No, I'm asking you to leave because I finally understand something." "And what's that?" he demanded. I looked directly at him. "You don't love me. You love what I do for you." My mother stood up so quickly she almost knocked over the coffee table. "That's not true." "Really?" I asked. "Then tell me. If I had never paid your bills, if I had never rescued Dylan, if I had never covered Rachel's rent, would you have even noticed if I stopped coming around?" Neither of them answered. That silence told me everything I needed to know. My father stormed toward the door. "You're acting selfish." For the first time in years, I smiled. "No," I said quietly. "I'm acting like the daughter you raised." I finally learned to put myself first. They left without another word. I thought it was over. I thought the worst was behind me. But 2 nights later, Aunt Linda called. Her voice was shaking. "Audrey, there's something you deserve to know." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "What is it?" She hesitated. "The reason your parents always treated you differently," my heart started pounding, "is because the man who raised you isn't your biological father." The room seemed to spin around me. "What?" I whispered. "There was an affair," she said quietly. "Your mother swore the truth would stay buried. Your father agreed to raise you, but after you were born, something changed. He never looked at you the same way again." I couldn't speak. Every memory I had ever carried, every cold look, every impossible expectation, every moment I felt like I didn't belong suddenly fit together. "You're lying," I managed to say. "I wish I was," she whispered. "And my mother?" I asked. "She knows," Aunt Linda replied. She always knew. I barely remember ending the call. I sat on the kitchen floor until sunrise, surrounded by old family photo albums I had pulled out of the closet. I looked at my childhood pictures differently now. The distance in my father's eyes. The way my brother and sister always stood close to him while I was just a little farther away. The moments I had spent years convincing myself I had imagined. Then I noticed something else. Tucked inside the back cover of one old photo album was a folded envelope. My name was written across the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single letter, and a faded photograph of a man I had never seen before. On the back of the photograph, written in blue ink, were 7 words that changed everything. If she ever finds this, tell Audrey I never abandoned her. I must have read the words on the back of that photograph 20 times. If she ever finds this, tell Audrey I never abandoned her. The handwriting was neat, careful, almost as if the person who wrote it had spent a long time deciding exactly what to say. I turned the photograph over again. The man looked to be in his early 30s. He had dark hair, kind eyes, and a smile that somehow felt familiar. I studied his face, trying to find pieces of myself in it, the shape of his nose, the curve of his smile, the little crease beside his left eye. For the first time in my life, I looked at a stranger and wondered if I was looking at my father. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I called Aunt Linda and asked her to come over. When she arrived, she saw the photograph sitting on my kitchen table and immediately went pale. "You found it," she whispered. "You knew about this too?" She sat down slowly, staring at the picture. I knew the letter existed, she admitted. I didn't know your mother had kept it. Who is he? She took a deep breath. His name is Daniel Carter. The name meant nothing to me. He and your mother dated before she met your father. They were serious. Everyone thought they'd get married. But Daniel got an opportunity to work overseas for a construction company. He was only supposed to be gone for a year. What happened? Your grandmother got sick while he was away. Your mother was overwhelmed. That's when she met your father. I frowned. You're telling me she cheated on both of them? Aunt Linda lowered her eyes. She thought Daniel wasn't coming back. And when he did? He came back 3 months before you were born. The room went quiet. I could almost picture it, a young man returning home, excited to start the life he had planned, only to discover the woman he loved was expecting another man's child. He knew about me? She nodded. He believed you were his. My heart skipped. What? Your mother told him you weren't. I stared at her. She lied? She told Daniel the baby belonged to her fiancé and that he needed to move on. She wanted stability. Your father had a steady job. Daniel didn't. I looked down at the photograph again. So, he never stopped trying. Aunt Linda pointed to the envelope. He wrote to your mother every year for almost a decade. She never answered. I opened the letter carefully. The paper was old and yellowed around the edges. Margaret, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Maybe you've already forgotten me. But if there's even a chance that little girl is mine, I want her to know one thing. I didn't leave because I didn't care. I left because I thought I was building a future for us. If she ever asks about me, please tell her I would have crossed any ocean to be her father. Daniel. By the time I reached the end, I was crying. Not because I had discovered a hidden father, but because for the first time in my life, I was reading words from someone who sounded as if they had wanted me. I didn't confront my mother immediately. I needed proof. A week later, I bought a DNA test. The wait for the results felt endless. Meanwhile, the silence from my family didn't last. Without my financial support, everything began falling apart. Rachel called first. Audrey, I'm serious, she said. I'm behind on rent. I'm sorry to hear that. That's it? You're not helping? No. You know, Mom says this isn't who you are. I looked around my apartment at the years of overtime and sacrifice that had built it. No, I answered quietly. I think this is the first time I've been myself, she hung up. Then Dylan appeared at my door. He looked exhausted. I just need a loan, he said. I've given you enough loans to buy a house. This is different. It's always different. He rubbed his face. You're really going to let your own brother lose everything? I looked him straight in the eyes. Did you ever stop to wonder what I lost while I was saving everyone else? He had no answer. 2 days later, my father called. His voice was colder than I had ever heard it. If you don't start acting like part of this family again, don't bother coming around. I almost told him the truth right then. I almost told him I knew. Instead, I simply replied, I don't think I was ever really allowed to be part of it. The DNA results arrived on a rainy Thursday morning as my hands were shaking so badly I could barely open the email. I stared at the screen. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. The man who raised me was not my biological father. A second comparison. Using the sample Aunt Linda had secretly helped me obtain from one of Daniel's old relatives, came back with an almost certain biological match. I sat in silence. I had spent my entire life trying to earn the love of a man who, deep down, had never truly accepted me. And somewhere out there was another man who had spent decades believing he had lost his daughter forever. I called the number Aunt Linda had found. It rang twice. A man answered. Hello? For a moment, I couldn't speak. Hello? He repeated. Is this Daniel Carter? Yes. My name is Audrey. A pause. Then I heard his voice crack. Audrey? My mother never gave you my letters, did she? The silence that followed was filled with 30 years of unanswered questions. No, he whispered. She told me you weren't mine. Tears rolled down my face. She lied. I heard him take a shaky breath. I looked for you, he said. For years. I hired investigators. I drove past your parents' house more times than I can count. But every time I got close, your mother threatened to call the police. She told me I was destroying her family. I closed my eyes. You weren't. No, he said quietly. I think it was already broken. A month later, I agreed to meet him. I was terrified. What if there was no connection? What if I had built up a fantasy that reality could never match? I arrived at a small cafe 15 minutes early. He was already there. The moment he stood up, I recognized the smile from the photograph. Neither of us knew what to say. Then he opened his arms. If this is too much, I understand, he said. I stepped forward and hugged him. It wasn't magical. It didn't erase 34 years of pain. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was standing next to someone who was happy simply because I existed. We talked for 4 hours. He showed me old photographs, postcards he had written but never sent, and a box he had kept in his attic for decades. Inside were birthday cards, one for my 5th birthday, one for my 10th, one for my 18th. Every year, he had written a message to the daughter he thought he would never meet. He had never stopped hoping. News of the DNA test spread through the family faster than I expected. My mother arrived at my apartment. Unannounced, she looked older somehow, smaller. You talked to Linda, she said. Yes, she had no right. No, I replied. The only person who had no right was the one who lied to everyone. Tears filled her eyes. I was scared. So you let me spend my whole life wondering why I was never enough? I thought I was protecting you. From what? She couldn't answer. A week later, my father came too. He stood awkwardly at the door, staring at the floor. I know you know, he said. I nodded. I was angry, he admitted. At your mother. At Daniel. At myself. And every time I looked at you, I remembered. I waited. I told myself I treated you the same. But the truth is, I didn't. No, I said quietly. You didn't. He wiped his eyes. I don't expect forgiveness. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, I spent years trying to become someone you'd be proud of. I paid the bills. I solved the problems. I gave you everything I had, he looked at me. And none of it had anything to do with me, I continued. I did those things because that's the kind of person I wanted to be. But I'm done trying to earn a place in a family that only notices me when they need something. He nodded slowly. Then he turned and walked away. That was the last time I saw him for almost a year. Life didn't transform overnight. There were difficult conversations, awkward holidays, messages I didn't answer. Rachel eventually found a job and started paying her own bills. Dylan sold his expensive truck and finally admitted he had been living beyond his means for years. As for my mother, she wrote me a letter. She apologized not for making one mistake decades ago, but for allowing that mistake to shape the way she raised me. I didn't forgive her immediately. Some wounds need time, but I stopped carrying the weight of them because I finally understood something that had taken me 34 years to learn. I had never been a pathetic failure. I was the child who worked harder than anyone else because she believed love had to be earned. Was the sister who gave until there was nothing left because she thought sacrifice would make people stay. And I was the daughter who kept trying to fix a family that had been broken long before she was born. The biggest surprise came 6 months later. Daniel invited me to a small family barbecue. I was nervous. I expected to feel like an outsider all over again. Instead, his wife greeted me with a hug. His sons, my half-brothers, argued over who got to sit next to me. No one asked for money. No one expected me to solve their problems. They just wanted me there. That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the trees, Daniel handed me one final birthday card he had written years before, but never had the chance to give me. Inside, it said, I don't know who you'll become, but I hope one day you realize you never had to earn being loved. I folded the card carefully and slipped it into my bag. For years, I thought family was something you had to fight for, pay for, and prove yourself worthy of. I was wrong. Real family doesn't measure your value by what you can give. Real family is the people who choose you, stand beside you, and love you even when you have nothing left to offer. And the day I stopped paying everyone else's bills was the day I finally stopped paying for love.